morning, everyone.
Good evening. Am I on? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to FT House on Tuesday night here in Davos. I'm very pleased to be here with Rene Haas, the ARM CEO, a great British company. And we're going to talk about everything under the sun, including Donald Trump's arrival in town tomorrow. So Rene's been at ARM for a long time. He's been CEO for 4 years. He's on the board of SoftBank, the majority owner, and I can't think of a more hectic, dynamic, interesting time to be leading a global chip company and overseeing one of the main investors in AI and robotics across the world. So I think the best place for us to start is if you just kind of introduce the company and set the scene for us about where ARM is post-IPO, in the middle of this AI hype boom. Obviously, you've got your start in making ultra-efficient chips for mobile phones, all of which you probably have a chip in your phones that you're holding up right now. But I want to hear where you are in the competitive landscape at the moment and where ARM is going next, where the next leg of growth is going to come from for the company.
Sure. No, thank you for having me. We're in the FT House, so I'm going to assume that there is some working knowledge of ARM from folks who are from the UK. But for those of you who aren't familiar with our company, we're about a 35-year-old company based in Cambridge that is best known for the world's most ubiquitous compute platform. Our product is a CPU, which is the digital brain of every single device. And as mentioned, I can assure you everyone has ARM on their body today, either in their smartphone or some other device, the smartwatch, etc. ARM is the CPU that powers literally 100% of all the smartphones on the planet. We power PCs, we power smartwatches, we power dishwashers, we power cars, but we also power data centers. NVIDIA is one of the largest partners that we have. The Vera Rubin platform that was just announced by Jensen at CES, the Vera CPU, that's all ARM. So we're everywhere, and now this time of what we're seeing with artificial intelligence relative to literally every device having to run some level of AI workload is a combination of fantastic challenge, but also opportunity. So we can chat more about that, but that's ARM in a nutshell. I think we calculated somewhere that the amount of ARM processors that have been shipped in our creation exceeds all the people who ever lived on Earth, and then some, which I think is 100 billion plus.
Wow, okay. Well, that's a great introduction, like setting the scene about like where ARM fits in the global tech landscape. It's very interesting, when you were at CES, you spoke to one of my colleagues and you talked about one of the overhangs that you're seeing on the market at the moment, which is a potential looming shortage in memory.
Yep.
As you said, the world is moving from prioritizing smartphones and data centers just for normal cloud computing, but now we have this vast explosion in data center construction, and a lot of the memory capacity is going towards components for those as opposed to components in smartphones, which naturally leads to the concern that either smartphone prices are going to rise to compensate for this lack of memory, or these phone makers are going to see a hit to their margins. I mean, how are you thinking about this, and do you think that this shortage can be, how long till this is cleared?
Yeah, so memory shortages in semiconductor industry are nothing new. We've seen them before, not the kind of dynamic that we're seeing this time. There's a type of memory called HBM memory, high bandwidth memory, which is largely used by these data center accelerators. The use for this high bandwidth memory has just exploded. And the reason for that is when you're doing an AI calculation and you're trying to calculate some of the key values that need to be referenced to spit out tokens, that reference is all held in this high bandwidth memory, and that's based on DRAM. So what we're seeing is there's such an insatiable need for this high bandwidth memory that the memory makers are shifting away their standard DRAM towards this high bandwidth memory, which for them is smart economics, But that puts a lot of pressure on the system for everything else that needs DRAM, which are smartphones, PCs, automobiles. So I think we're going to see some pain in the short term. But in our world, shortages are basically the catalyst for invention. And I think what we're going to start to see is a lot of people looking for alternative ways to build systems that aren't so reliant on this kind of high bandwidth memory. That's not going to happen overnight. That's going to take some time. But I also think it's necessary because as AI starts to move from the data center to the edge devices, and edge devices are essentially wearables or smartphones, the last mile that does the calculations, AI will start to run in those physical devices, and that will require some different kind of memory technology because high bandwidth memory is too high powered to run inside a phone. So I think we're going to see some short-term pain, quite candidly, but I think in the long term it'll be a good thing because it'll drive some new innovation.
And what about the price of everyone's Pixel and iPhones? Are they going to go up this year?
I would expect some of that, to be honest with you. Typically the way DRAM shortages tend to work is that they get passed on all the way up to the end consumer. And now how that ultimately plays out in terms of elasticity of demand, that'll be interesting to see. I would expect, though, if things continue, you're going to have to see some level of pricing increases passed on. There's no way around it.
Yeah. And that segues into my next question. I mean, you've been here for a day now. This is your first Davos, I believe.
First one.
A lot of the questions that have come across this year, we've seen a few mini market panics. Like, what's your take on whether we're in an AI bubble? Like, is the hype exceeding the reality, or?
Oh gosh,
the
bubble can be defined a number of different ways. Whether there's a valuation bubble, whether there's a bubble in terms of this level of demand. The way I look at where we are with AI in terms of impacting our lives, if I used a baseball vernacular, maybe not a good analogy to use. I'll use football, which is a 90-minute.
Soccer or football?
I'll use your football.
Okay.
Which is a 90-minute match. We may be only in the first 10 minutes, maybe even less. And why do I say that? Folks who work for a large enterprise or even a small enterprise, ask yourselves how much of the workflows that you have inside your company are actually driven by real AI. And I'm not talking about somebody in finance using ChatGPT to gen up a forecast. I'm talking about real workflows inside the enterprise. It's literally nowhere. I mean, literally nowhere. Yet you still have 800 million users using ChatGPT, which is an insane number. I do believe that enterprise is going to be a gigantic application space, and it's really nowhere. Part of this is that it's not easy to transform it. When you think about workflows, whether it's around SAP or Salesforce or other things that you have inside the enterprise, transitioning those to full AI, that's going to take a lot of time. Now, are we seeing the spend potentially getting ahead of itself relative to demand? I think in the short term we'll probably see some of that, but in the long term, I think about the internet bubble that took place, and I remember an investment that I made in the late 1990s. My broker at the time said, "Hey, there's a company that their business model is they're going to deliver groceries that you can order on the internet." A company's called Webvan. I said, well, that sounds like a good idea. Who would not want groceries ordered on the internet? Business model was a disaster. It's before 3G, 4G phones. You had no GPS, no mobile phones, so everything was done on the desktop. So Webvan was a colossal failure. But buying groceries online using the internet, not a bad idea. And AI dwarfs that in terms of its actual capability and efficiency. So no, when I hear that, I can't even get my head around it, just in the sense of when I think about what a utility artificial intelligence will add to our lives.
So it doesn't surprise you that we're seeing private valuations for Anthropic at 350 billion, OpenAI at 500.
No.
No. These are plausible numbers to you, in particular if they IPO this year.
If a decade or two ago, when GE was the largest market cap company, and someone would have told Jack Welch that NVIDIA was going to be $5 trillion in 15 to 20 years, they would have said, what does NVIDIA do? Right? So, no, I don't think, the numbers are crazy numbers relative to what we've seen, But I think what we've also seen, particularly with tech innovation, is that when we look back 10 years on something that's as profound as what we're seeing now, the numbers actually look small. And that's what I believe here.
Really? Well, I mean, when we were here at Davos last year, you had Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, talking about spending 80 billion a year on largely data centers, right? Many of which will involve NVIDIA GPUs and your CPUs. Microsoft is now forecasting 140 billion. You know, it's similar escalation in numbers at Google and AWS, not to mention what OpenAI is spending on projects like Stargate, which you're involved in. Are you seeing any softening in demand as we head into 2026, in particular with all the geopolitical noise going on?
I think the numbers do need to square themselves on some level. You know, back to the do we see any fallback or drawback in demand? Back to my enterprise example, AI is largely not being used in the enterprise for real work and real work improvement. So that tells me that there's huge demand for AI capability. But on the flip side, these are large numbers. They are so large in terms of relative to even a Microsoft or a Google or a Meta or an Amazon with giant balance sheets. At some point, how do you actually scale the capital for return? So will you start to see sovereign investments into, and whether it's the U.S. or whether it's other parts of the world? I think you're going to start to see models that start to evolve in terms of how to maintain that level of investment. And then there's always this race with China. You know, how to think about that. China has a number of things that the West doesn't really have that they're really, really good at. China's very, very good at access to energy, and China's, because they don't have an antiquated grid. There's not a lot of regulations when they need to put up a new power plant or build new transmission lines, and they build things very, very fast.
Yeah.
So I think there is feelings amongst people, either in government or in the market, of how do we square this giant investment required, which is beyond the balance sheet of a lot of companies today, versus there's a race going on here in terms of how to get the productivity sooner.
Yeah, and are people talking about this, you know, in particular, since we're sat here in Europe? There's usually a lot of grousing about how difficult it is to build things in Europe versus America. Whether this is, you know, getting the construction permissions, linking them up to the electricity grid, you know, what is the sense from talking to your fellow executives? I mean, is Europe's stance changing on that? Are they true believers in AI like the Trump administration is in the US, and they're trying to remove barriers, or are we still seeing a little bit of reticence and caution?
I definitely get a sense, and it's interesting. I was at the AI. I was out at Davos last year, but I was at the AI Safety Summit in Paris, which was, I think, a couple of months after the Davos event. And at that time, I sensed a reticence from Europe on investment. There was a lot around safety, around measures to control what was going on with AI. And the U.S. was very much in the West, along with the U.K. actually, of a continue to invest heavily. This was a few months, again, as I said, after Trump took office. Fast forward 7 to 8 months from that, I sense a difference from European leaders who do recognize that the AI opportunity is real and it will have real benefits for society, but also how to measure that against not punishing the citizens who rely on the grid for energy, et cetera, et cetera. And if we build new energy sources, that we don't see an impact to them. So no answers, but I definitely get a sense that it's moved more towards we need to solve this, as opposed to we're thinking about safety first versus solving.
Yeah. So as we all know, President Trump will arrive tomorrow. There's a lot of stuff going on, whether it's Greenland, you know, battling with its fellow NATO allies over the future of Greenland, you know, the regime change in Venezuela. As a global chip maker, are you worried about potentially more tariffs, restrictions on chips? You know, is a trade war potentially going to derail 2026 for ARM?
Yeah, I have a lot to worry about on my plate besides Venezuela and Greenland. But at the same time, obviously we watch what's going on with tariffs pretty carefully. What I've seen from the administration has been ultimately, my opinion, a willingness ultimately to get deals done. There was a lot of noise last year about Japan and Korea and Taiwan, and we've solved those, right? The U.S. has negotiated trade deals with each one of those countries. So I have no inside information, but I will just say I'm an optimist that ultimately the administration will find a way to get deals done.
Yeah. And the Trump administration has obviously been very keen to move manufacturing capacity, like from places like Taiwan back to the US, in particular Intel, being one of them. Has that been successful? I mean, tech CEOs are fond of going to the White House and saying that they're going to invest X hundred of billion, which Trump likes, but are they actually genuinely following through? Are we seeing manufacturing capacity come back to the US, and is that happening for you guys as well?
Slowly. And when I say slowly, Taiwan Semiconductor, TSMC, the world's leader in building chips for our industry, magnificent at what they do, was a 30-year venture. And they weren't really the leaders until probably 5 to 10 years ago, maybe less, depending on where the numbers line up. The bottom line is it takes a lot of time, and the U.S. fell behind badly, and investment moved its way offshore. There's definitely an appetite from the administration to accelerate this, and you see that with the U.S. investment in Intel, right? $5 billion into Intel, but it will take time. But on the flip side, I'm happy to see it starting. Not so much from a nationalistic standpoint, and ARM is a UK company, so we participate globally. But I think supply chain resiliency from a geographic standpoint is mandatory. I think single point of failure, where the world's leading fabs sit in one part of the world, is not healthy. And we saw this during COVID on a minor level when it took 52 weeks to get a key fob back if you lost your keys. And that was because they were built in one place and the supply chain was linked to one area. So simply for supply chain resiliency, it's quite necessary, and I think it's the right strategy in the long term.
Yeah. You're doing some interesting things behind the scenes at the moment. The FT has reported that you're in talks with Meta to build your own chip. So ARM's business model for a long time has been to provide blueprints and designs for CPUs that are then built by TSMC for other companies. And if you believe what's written in the FT, you're going to start making your own chips, thereby going into competition with some of your partners. Can you comment on where this Meta chip is in development, and how you're going to manage the potentially, are you going to manage a frictionless transition from partner to competitor with people like NVIDIA?
I love the FT.
That's why you're here.
That's why I'm here. But on that particular point, I'm not going to comment on products that we haven't announced or will not announce or may not announce. But I will say that for years we've had a lot of people asking us to do this. And you'd say, well, why would they want ARM to possibly provide an end product? Largely because the technology is so ubiquitous. The software ecosystem relies on supply. And what do I mean by that? Because we build a CPU, the CPU platform is really only as good as the software ecosystem around it, the software that's been invested in it. And there are certain markets and certain areas where we have partners who say, I wish we had more optionality where more software could be written. So we know that's a high order bid. And we have had customers come to us and ask, could we do this for them? And I'll leave it there for now.
Okay. But if you do go down that route, which it sounds like you are, it will change the shape of the business. You're going to go from a very high margin, royalties and kind of your blueprint business to actually making your own chips, which will generate more revenue, but come with higher costs and indeed risks, and put you, as I mentioned before, in competition with a lot of very other powerful companies like NVIDIA, sort of NVIDIA, and increasingly with Qualcomm, etc. Is that how you're going to be the next phase of growth? I mean, I think your market cap, the last time I checked, was 110, 120 billion.
Yeah, I think we're green. I think we're green today. My CFO sent me a nice message saying, in a sea of red, we're green today.
How do you bridge the gap with NVIDIA?
We'll see how that goes.
That's 4.9 trillion at the moment.
Yeah, we have room to grow.
Yeah.
We have room to grow.
So you are on the board of SoftBank. Many of you will know a very large Japanese investor, famous for lots of blockbuster investments like ARM and lots of not so blockbuster investments like WeWork. I'm just wondering if you can talk to me. Adam Newman's back though. If you can talk to me a little bit about your your work at SoftBank. I mean, Arm is partnering with OpenAI, which is partnering with Oracle and another company called Crusoe to build this vast data center in Abilene, in Texas, which is the first part of the Stargate project, which was announced at Davos last year to great fanfare. Can you tell me a little bit about how it's been to like participate in this project and where we go from here? I mean, it's the first leg in this global system of data centers OpenAI is planning.
Yeah, so SoftBank bought ARM, took us off the public markets in 2016, and has owned us at 100% ever since. And when we went public, the float was pretty small. Masa held 90% of the shares, and that was September of 2023. Fast forward to now, he hasn't sold anything, has not sold one share at all. So he's very big on ARM. He's very big on the long-term future of ARM. And I would say I feel very fortunate as the CEO of ARM to have SoftBank as a large investor and Masa to be on board. He and I talk constantly. I'm on the SoftBank board. And I think there's a lot of benefit we get in terms of the synergy between the two companies. When you think about Stargate, so Stargate was a big, and it's interesting, Stargate we announced about a year ago-ish today. It was a $500 billion investment over time to build data centers with OpenAI and Microsoft and Oracle. At the time, people looked at that number and said, that is an incredibly ridiculous number. 1 year later, it's not viewed that way. That opportunity, given the fact that NVIDIA is going to be using ARM technology, we have visibility in terms of how to build efficient data centers. We're working very closely with Oracle. Oracle is a big ARM user themselves. It gives us a unique partnership and a unique capability to deliver something that a lot of companies cannot. When you think about SoftBank on the capital and infrastructure side, SoftBank also owns energy companies. They have 100% of SoftBank Energy. SoftBank just put in an offer to buy Digital Bridge, an asset company that's involved in power and energy. It's fantastic, and I think it gives the customers a huge amount of optionality going forward. So it's been a great partnership, and Masa's been fantastic to work with.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I mean, it's fair to say he's an idiosyncratic person with an interesting investment and leadership style. What is it like to work with him? And is this like his moment? He's been talking about AI and robotics for more than a decade, and now with some of these plans are seeming to be like technologically, possible. I mean, are you bullish on SoftBank?
Yeah, Masa's pretty good at looking around corners and making big bets. I mean, you mentioned WeWork, but one of the things that he did an amazing job with back when the iPhone first came out, he met Steve Jobs, loved the device, and said, "Can I be your exclusive provider in Japan of the iPhone?" And Steve Jobs said to him, "You don't even own an operating company. I mean, how can you possibly be in that world?" But Masa felt that the iPhone was going to be a transformative device, bought Vodafone Japan, turned it into SoftBank Mobile, which was the exclusive supplier for iPhones for quite some time. Early internet days, this is pre-Internet Explorer, Masa connected and made an early investment into Yahoo and created Yahoo Japan. And again, that bridge between offering internet to Japan providers and got into DSL and things of that nature. So he's really good at looking around corners. He's had these ideas about robotics and singularity for quite some time. So yes, to your point, is this his moment now? A bit. Yeah, a bit. I think he's seeing the confluence of a lot of things of his big vision of singularity, robotics, efficient processors, which is ARM fits in. So yes, I give him a lot of credit for being able to look around corners.
Interesting you mentioned partnering with Steve Jobs and Apple on the iPhone, because of course the next big device is apparently going to be something OpenAI is developing with Johnny Ive, who left Apple and recently had his company acquired for $6.5 billion. And ARM is involved in this project, but it's all very mysterious. We don't really know what it is yet. So can you clear it up?
Yeah, I don't think this is the time and place to solve that mystery, but I'll leave it at Johnny Ive's a great partner. OpenAI is a big SoftBank is a big investor in OpenAI, and there's a lot of exciting potential in terms of what the companies can do together.
Yeah, SoftBank has about $30 billion invested in AI.
Into OpenAI.
OpenAI, sorry.
I think somewhere around that number. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is there any appetite to kind of increase that before, as the company talks about potentially doing an IPO this year?
I'm sure Masa would love to. He is a big fan. He's a big fan of everybody who's doing the AI work. He's a big fan of Anthropic. He's a big fan of Google, but he definitely is a big fan of OpenAI. It's been a great partnership.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about, this is going to be a very FT question. There was an analyst note from Bank of America recently where you were downgraded, and they said that you were too reliant on SoftBank as a partner and a customer. How do you respond to that criticism?
Yeah, we're in a quiet period at the moment, so there's not much I can say about the forward earnings that we're going to have, but our last quarter, we not only beat expectations, but raised the guidance. And where we've seen a lot of growth from has been royalties. We made a big shift a couple of years ago away from licensing individual blocks of IP to these, what we call compute subsystems, a complete block of a whole set of processors put together, customer can license it, they can advance their time to market, et cetera, et cetera. The royalty rates on those are double, if not triple, of some of the previous products, and that's driven a lot of royalty growth. So I would say just watch this space, but royalty growth has been a big driver for us.
And there are a bunch of hacks at Bank of America.
You said that, not me.
Another interesting person you've had the fortune of working with in your career is Jensen Huang when you worked at NVIDIA. You just mentioned before that GE would have the GE CEO would have eaten his hat if you told him if they would grow from this graphics chip manufacturer that only video game people knew about to the largest company in the world. I mean, are you surprised that or impressed or that Jensen has managed to do this? And what's next for him?
Impressed, certainly. Surprised, no. When I was at NVIDIA, our market, I was there for about 8 years. I think the market cap was 20 when I started, and it was 20 when I left. It went up and down in between. But
20 billion.
20 billion, yeah, $20 billion. But at the time, one of the things that was kicked off at NVIDIA was something called CUDA. And this was 2006, 2007, so it was almost 20 years ago. And one of the visions that Jensen had was that the GPU was going to be probably good at something other than drawing triangles or rendering 3D graphics. Didn't know what it was, but one of the things that was going to be required to make that happen was a programming language, something that would be able to take basic code and compile it down to running on a GPU. Not easy. What does that tell you about Jensen? Plays the long game, willing to make investments and willing to bet pretty large, even when there's no market opportunity. CUDA, at the time, added a lot of real estate to the GPUs. To make them CUDA programmable, we had to add certain things in terms of the tensor engines, which added significant die area, which wasn't being taken advantage of, which was a hit to margins, it was a hit to profit, and he really stuck through that. So no, not surprised. He's shown incredible resilience throughout his entire career, and what he's done is just amazing. I have, like with Masa, I have incredible respect for Jensen. Worked directly for him for a number of years, and then, for those of you may remember, NVIDIA tried to buy ARM in 2020, and I remember getting a call from him saying, you're coming back, and I had a PTSD moment, or it's like, is this going to be a good thing or a bad thing? But the things worked out for both sides. NVIDIA's done great, and I think ARM has done okay as well.
I think it's been good for the ecosystem that the company stays.
I think it worked out well for both sides.
Term.
Yeah, worked out well for both sides.
Okay, I think we've just about reached the end of our time. That was a very interesting and informative chat. So if everyone could give a round of applause to our guests. And I've been asked to remind you all that you have 30 minutes, a very tight 30 minutes, to enjoy what I think is a free bar before you're all going to get kicked out. Do you have time for one question?
Sure. As long as it's not about a product announcement.
My name is Ian Sheridan. I'm a civil barrister. I'm based in London, Mountford Chambers. But I spent 10 years researching this book. You can see it's a law textbook, but it also has 2 chapters on strategy. Now, the positive is it has 10 references to ARM, all good, so you'll enjoy that. Now, I had 7 questions. I'm only going to ask one question, and it's a constructive question. I know that you, as part of Arm's service, you offer this flexible access to startups, to entrepreneurs. And we all know that you need more new companies, you need more customers. What does Arm do to help entrepreneurs that might be existing employees? And this isn't a new thing. As you know, Ericsson was doing it for years. So what I mean is there must be people within Arm who, they're not going to become you. How do you support people to become, potentially your customers?
So you're asking in terms of what do we put in place for employees?
Yes, so not from the point of view of, go off and do an MBA, but how do you as a board and as directors, how do you encourage people to become the next? Let me put it another way. 35 years ago, Arm was a startup. So they're entrepreneurs. You've inherited an entrepreneurial culture. How do you create the next generations?
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful question. I think for us it's a little bit more implicit versus explicit. We play in a very large ecosystem where we not only work with companies that are startups, this flexible access program that you mentioned, but we've had a lot of people leave Arm where we fund them, and they'll just go off and do their own companies and things as such. We will do funding for VCs. So the VC ends up being a licensee, and as a result, they can provide the technology. We did a very large deal. We don't have many employees in Malaysia, but we did a very large licensing deal with the Malaysian government where the Malaysian government is our customer in lieu of startup companies in Malaysia who couldn't pay to get access to technology. So in that world, we work very closely with the Malaysian government. They pay Arm a license fee. Said startup wants to create a chip based on Arm. There is no license fee. The government provides the access to it. So it's something we do in a lot of different ways and in many different aspects.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.